Welcome to Sound Off, your community's platform for free speech. I'm your host, John Blaschke. I'm here with a very important guest tonight. She is the CEO and president of the Center for Family Justice Incorporated, Deborah Greenwood. I would like to thank you for being here tonight. It's a pleasure to meet you. Would you mind telling me a bit about how you got the Center for Family Justice started and what exactly your organization does?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, thanks for having me on, John. So our agency has been serving the greater Bridgeport area for 126 years, believe it or not. And we started in 1895 as a YWCA. Then as we started to go through the decades, realized that it was important to start to focus on working with victims of domestic violence, sexual violence, and children being affected by abuse in 1997. A few short years after the Violence Against Women Act really became important in the United States. So the board at that time transformed actually the entire agency to the Center for Women and Families. And when I arrived in 2007, one of the very interesting topics really went something like this. What is the best way to serve victims of abuse? And we really couldn't find that answer on seeing that an individual might go through the process 7 to 10 times before they actually either leave the abusive relationship or worse happens to them. And that's measured by the Department of Justice. So we had a very strong evaluation done by community partners through the Harvard Business School. It was a pro bono evaluation that really peeled the onion back on the agency to look at every program and support services we were doing, but most importantly spoke to those that had either stayed in our domestic violence safe house, taken a counseling or support group. We're working with our clients on many different levels. So we collected the data and through this whole evaluation process discovered something called the Family Justice Center that was founded in 2002. And 22 of them were replicated across the United States that really took every possible type of program a victim of abuse would need so that she or he would come through the door or call the hotline and be seen by an expert counselor to get not only counseling, support groups, if they need a safe place to stay in a shelter, if they needed legal support services, and then their children needed crisis services. They need to work with our court advocates because we all know that throughout the years, laws have thankfully gotten better. But in addition to that, we have court staff that are also located at Golden Hill Street, and we have staff that are also off-site in our undisclosed location for a safe place for a victim of abuse to live and reside, with or without their children, most of the time with. So having co-located services under one roof, studying this model in San Diego, California, we felt very strongly that we wanted to replicate this type of program. And with a lot of fundraising and work and conversations and meetings, it took us 4 years, and we cut the ribbon on Connecticut's first Family Justice Center. We then changed our name to the Center for Family Justice, and we have watched the data of evaluation, which helps a victim get what they need in the first or second time that they come through that door, which is really the hardest thing for anyone to do that's a victim. Not only calling a hotline, but coming through the doors at our main headquarters at 753 Fairfield Avenue.
So what exactly brought about the change from being the YWCA to changing to the Center for Family Justice? Would you mind going into a bit more detail about that transition?
Sure, I'd be happy to. When the Violence Against Women Act was really adopted in our country by Congress, then through Senator Joe Biden, it took him about 10 years to also collect data from victims where they did not have a place to go. They didn't have a shelter. They didn't have experienced counselors that can help support a victim through that journey that they go through. And that's where he was starting to measure that someone would literally go 7 to 10 times through either a 911 call with law enforcement, or they would end up going back to the abusive relationship for a lot of reasons. Financial abuse is usually the first thing that happens to a victim. They don't have access to money, or the threats of the abuser saying, I will take the children, I will hurt you, I will kill you. All of those things that we hear and recognize. So as this law went into place, the board at that time, through the YWCA, felt very passionate about joining the rest of the state of Connecticut, which was divided up into 18 different components. Whether you were in the Hartford area or you were in the Stamford, Darien area, and the greater Bridgeport area really serves Bridgeport, Easton, Fairfield, Monroe, Stratford, and Trumbull. However, a victim can go anywhere, whether it's going north, going south. All services are provided, are free, and they're also confidential. So from that point, the disaffiliation from the YWCA happened within the board. They changed their name to the Center for Women and Families. And then our third change happened in 2016 when we finally cut the ribbon and became the Center for Family Justice, adopting this national model that has proven that a victim not only gets the support that she or he needs, and it may take a while. What I mean by that is once they've gotten past the crisis, the second half of what we were not doing, that we are doing now, is self-sufficiency to that individual. What do I mean by that? We don't want her or him to go back through that cycle. So we will help them find a job. We will help them find housing if they've been staying in our shelter. We will help their children through the trauma, because we know that kids living in these households also become secondary victims. They're listening to the verbal abuse, the emotional abuse, and unfortunately, more than half of the time, the children also become physically abused as well. So with that, each case may be different, but there's a lot of similarities, which includes two very important words: power and control. The abuser always has the power and control over the victim. What we help the individual navigate is how to get to survivorship and self-sufficiency by having their own financial wherewithal. It might even be credit repair, because as they've left the relationship, perhaps their credit is not where it needs to be.
So it's in a way helping them leave the umbrella of the person that's holding dominion over them, and helping them gain control over their own life, so that not having to, like you said, go back to the offender. Exactly
right. And one of the loud and clear messages we heard from our clients when we were becoming a Family Justice Center, which didn't happen when we cut the ribbon, but it happened exactly a year later, was providing free pro bono legal support. You know, when you're going to court, the norm would be everyone's represented by an attorney. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have dollars or funds to do that,
lawyers hard to get.
Exactly. And we have great staff at court. They help them navigate what's going to happen, how to go before the judge, how to really work with family relations, because we know many times the abuser may take control over the children, or the pets, or the assets of whatever that individual has. And it's different in many cases, but it's still the exact same thing. So it was very important that we have legal support at the agency. So 1 year after we cut the ribbon in 2016, we worked very hard with some of the local law schools, and we started a legal incubator program that took law students that had graduated from, whether it was Quinnipiac, UConn, Yale, that were looking for a space so they can learn more about what we do, get some training, perhaps start their own business. So they had 2 years to have a space at the Center for Family Justice. But the give back to us was to represent clients in court while they were being housed in our location. And that still works very well, but it still wasn't enough. So we knew that we had to work very hard now, not only in fundraising, but in grants and foundations, and to hire attorneys that were staff employees of the Center for Family Justice. We accomplished that 3 years ago with 2 incredible grantees, and with that, we now have someone that oversees legal, and we have 2 full-time attorneys.
So the Center for Family Justice, it's expanded a lot in the past few years. It's seen a lot of growth.
It really has. I think if I have to reflect back on the last 5 years, John, one of the things that makes me smile when we cut the ribbon is 1 week prior to cutting the ribbon on this initiative, we also had been looking at something that was also very near and dear to my heart. And before I came to the center, I used to work for YMCAs locally, and then did a lot of great work with the YMCA of the USA. But more importantly, I ran a day camp in the region, and you'd see a few hundred kids every day on the property, and you learned a lot. But when we heard some of the darker stories, when the kids would disclose things, we actually used to call the agency I'm currently the CEO of, and we knew the support, whether it was sexual violence or that was happening to the child, or physical or emotional abuse. We were very connected to this agency, and not understanding as much as I wanted to, I actually took the certification, which is a 40-hour training to understand a lot more about what abuse really looks like and what the faces of abuse might be, whether it was physical abuse, sexual violence, all those assets that might hurt a child or an adult. And back to California, in San Diego, California, a gentleman by the name of Casey Gwynn started something called Camp Hope America. And it is the only program in the world that works with kids who have been traumatized due to abuse, measuring, using the adverse childhood experience, measuring the different assets that a child might have experienced. And I had said to Mr. Gwynn when I was out in California, wow, if you ever get to replicate that, we sure could use a program like that here in Connecticut, and I'm sure in every city and town in the United States needs a program like that. Fortunately and unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So as we got the phone call when I heard that there was a very large donation that was going to support the replication of Camp Hope America, I was on the email and phone immediately with Mr. Gwynn saying, please pick us. And he told me what I had to do and apply just like anyone else. And we got the word actually the night before, April 4th, when we cut our ribbon, April 3rd, 2016, that we would be starting a Camp Hope America in Bridgeport, Connecticut, for kids that have been victims of abuse and trauma. And we have partnered with the Central Connecticut Coast YMCA, kind of going back home, using their sleepaway camp, a lot of the services that they have. And we now work with these children every single week, where they come and get support services. They go away in the summer and to sleepaway camp, and we help them find hope again. So as we've measured the impact we've had as a Family Justice Center, as well as Camp Hope America Bridgeport, I look back on the lives that we're saving versus what might have happened in so many other cases, as we've seen throughout the pandemic. We've heard these horrific stories in the media, but our job is really to get in front of it before it does become something a lot worse.
So hope is definitely the theme of that. I can see where that would be the slogan, hope starts here, for the Center for Family Justice.
Yes.
With such a heavy and serious topic, what sort of protections does your organization provide to these individuals?
It's a great question. So a domestic violence, sexual violence safe house is really a great protection for someone, especially when there's a 911 call and law enforcement is walking into a household not knowing what they're going to find. Usually officers go out with two to a domestic violence 911, and every city and town in Connecticut has been trained through a lethality assessment. What does that mean? That has come out of our state coalition, and we all have been trained on how to help law enforcement identify what the risk factor is when they go on these calls. If we were talking about 10, 15, 20 years ago, it would just be, well, can't you guys just make up and get on with it? And we know what always happens after that. It does not have a good outcome.
Escalates typically.
It escalates. So now, even if the victim is identified and the abusers identified, there's a leave behind that law enforcement has with our hotline number, and they actually, meaning that law enforcement will call this lethality assessment line and let us know that they've had a call, whether it's Bridgeport, Stratford, Monroe, Fairfield, it doesn't matter what town, whatever town we serve, to kind of give us a heads up that this might be a dangerous situation. There might be weapons in the house, children in the house. So there's a lot more training and education that happens with agencies like ours, and our strongest partner is law enforcement.
Do you reach out to these individuals personally, or do they have to come to you?
The very first time, they have to come to us. If we reach out to someone before we hear from them, and I would say to anyone that's listening right now, if you know someone that needs support services, the hotlines are on 24/7, 365 days a year. You can get free help, confidential help. We can help you safety plan, and certainly know that we work with our partners across the greater Bridgeport region, and we will get you the help that you need. If you think you're a victim, or you know someone, if you need counseling to help that individual because they're scared. The one thing we've learned in the years of doing this work, victims blame themselves. What did I do to deserve this? What did I do? What could I have done better? And the answer is, you did nothing to deserve abuse. So, we believe you. We are victim advocates. We will get you all the support we can, but we need you to reach out to us first, whether it's calling the hotline or Monday through Friday. Our offices are open 9 to 5, but the hotlines are never closed.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to say the phone number for the domestic violence hotline is 203-384-9559, and the sexual violence hotline is 203-333-2233. And if anyone listening at home has questions for Deborah, feel free to call in now. I'm sure that she'd be happy to answer anything that you might have a question about with such a serious topic. Since COVID started, how would you say, I've heard personally on the news that there have been a massive uptick in domestic violence cases. So how has that affected your organization?
It has. When we all shut down, we pivoted remotely within 48 hours. Thanks to the strong staff we have at the center, we knew everyone would continue to take their case files home and be as close to normal as we could, but courts shut down as well. So that really backlogged, and it still has backlogged a lot of the family court and family relations issues, restraining orders, all the things that a victim might need. It got very quiet in March, but by the time we started to round into April, people were finding their way to the hotlines. The hotels that we had to put people in because we couldn't move people out of our safe houses. Even if there was a safe house in a northern part of our state, because of COVID, we couldn't do that. And you just try to imagine someone sheltering at home with an abusive partner. Anything you could possibly think of would be happening. First of all, how do you reach out and use your phone because that person's right there? You had to time it. Maybe it would be when they were asleep and you could call the hotline. Maybe you could try to use your laptop if you even have one, or your phone. And our number does not show up. So many times abusers will check a computer and devices to see where those numbers are. So that's why it's important that someone reach out to us first so we don't jeopardize your safety. But once that happens, we go through the whole safety planning process of how to continue that conversation, and they know that they can have access to our hotlines at any hour of the day. So with COVID happening, we were moving people into regional hotels. Unfortunately, we don't have enough staff to protect them in the hotel, but we have the staff that would check in on them consistently. Just on a financial cost, we started with $8,000 to $10,000 a month of hotel costs, and they quickly turned into $20,000, $25,000, and $30,000 a month. But you just do it. You can't think about it. You just figure it out, and you'll fix it later. So what we did see during that time, keeping in mind children, we're doing remote learning. So a child going to school will usually find that adult they trust to tell their story if something bad is going on at home.
And that's how you first heard about it.
Exactly. And mandated reporters as teachers, guidance counselors, people that work with kids, even if recreational sports coaches that have gone through training on how to identify if a child discloses a story. And we've now renamed this the second pandemic because of the amount of children that we're seeing. We would average anywhere from 200 to 225 children a year from our 6 towns. And I can tell you that we've gone way past that number of kids. And so this kind of goes back to the Camp Hope program that we have, even though it uses the word camp. It's a year-long program helping kids through that trauma. They've been beaten down, not just physically, verbally, emotionally. They've been traumatized watching what's going on at home. It affects the way they learn. It affects physiologically wise how their brains develop and how they grow into becoming more mature. So the side effects of all of this has been working with our highly trained staff, our clinicians, getting that help that they need, and being able to measure what that child might need as we continue through. So as you talk about kids that were working remotely from home, and now getting the support that they need, we call it a forensic interview that we do as a children's advocacy center. Our third leg of the stool, besides domestic violence and sexual violence, is also the children that we have come through our highly trained unit called MDT, a multi-interdisciplinary team. So we work with the youth officers in Stratford and in Bridgeport and all our other suburban towns that we serve, and those interviews are done at our main headquarters.
I know, obviously, you help a lot of people, but how exactly, what is the best way that your organization spreads the word in order to help people realize that these services are available to them?
Doing a lot of what I'm doing tonight, actually being able to not only get the word out with print materials and the events that we do to not only raise dollars, but spread awareness that we have the services that we do have. And October just happens to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we will be having a vigil with all 6 towns on Thursday, October the 14th at the Beardsley Zoo. It will be indoors at the Carousel Room. We will ask people to please wear masks. We will have them available if you forget to bring one. And the focus will be on youth and kids. So we have a lot of our kids in our high schools and in performing arts that will be also spreading awareness through performing arts. We will be honoring the 19 individuals in Connecticut that lost their lives due to domestic violence that come from different cities and towns in our state. And then we'll talk about what's the one thing every person can do. So we'll be able to have a lot of different speakers. We'll be talking about our White Ribbon campaign, our men that stand up. They're not bystanders. They stand up and don't accept abuse towards women, girls, or anyone, because we also know that men are also victims of abuse. And we've seen those numbers increase as well. And our whole object is really being able to let people know that there's an agency like ours in every area of our state, as well as every state in the country, that can help them. And there's no cost. Everything they say and do is well protected. It's confidential. So if you're someone that's listening tonight, please know that what you tell us is confidential. You are protected by law with what you say to us, and we will help you.
Is there anything else that that you would like to add? Is there anything that just off the top of your head, if there's like one takeaway message for tonight?
I would say this. There was the big case that just happened recently in our country where a young lady lost her life, And there were bystanders that heard her screams of help, please help me, that brings me back to bystander. And whether it's that case, that we see those cases every single day. I would say if you think something doesn't seem right, don't be a bystander. Call our hotline. You don't have to be the victim. Ask what you might do, what you can do to encourage someone to seek that help. We hear those stories all the time. We won't reach out to that individual because, once again, we don't want to jeopardize the safety of that individual. But once that individual calls the hotline or just walks in to our office at 753 Fairfield Avenue, we then will work with you on counseling, on support group, and anything else that you need to keep yourself safe.
Okay. Deborah, that about wraps it up. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you, John, and to everyone that was listening, know that hope starts here.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. Sweet
Good
dreams.
night.